Every morning, millions of people wake up, go to work, earn a paycheck, pay their bills, and hope that someday they'll finally become financially free. But something strange has have been happening. Every year, the richest people on earth become dramatically richer, and not by thousands of dollars, not by millions, sometimes by billions, in a single year, sometimes in a single day. Meanwhile, millions of hardworking people struggle just to keep up with rising prices. And here's the question: is the system broken, or are billionaires simply playing an entirely different game? Because if you look closely, the world's richest people don't just have more money, they follow completely different rules. Rules that most people are never taught, rules that quietly move wealth upward year after year, generation after generation, and once you understand these rules, you'll never look at money the same way again. Most of us grow up believing one simple equation: work harder, earn more money, and become rich. It sounds logical, and for many careers, working harder can increase your income, but there's one problem: income is not wealth. Those two words sound similar, but they represent completely different worlds. Imagine two people. Person A is a successful surgeon earning $500,000 every year. Person B owns 20% of technology company. The surgeon works 60 hours every week. The business owner sleeps. One morning, the company's stock rises by 10% without touching a scalpel, without attending a meeting, without even opening a laptop. The owner's wealth increases by $5 billion, not because they worked harder, but because they own something. That's the first secret. And the rich don't become richer primarily through income, they become richer or through ownership. And that changes everything. Think about your own life. You wake up, you exchange your time for money, the company pays you. You spend that money, then you repeat the cycle again and again and again. Most people spend their entire lives inside this loop: time for money, money for expenses, expenses back to work. Economists call this earned income, but billionaires rarely depend on earned income. Instead, they own machines that produce money: businesses, stocks, real estate, patents, software, music royalties, and brands. Every one of these assets keeps generating value whether the owner is working or not. That's why someone can become wealthier while they're on vacation. Their assets never sleep. Your paycheck stops the moment you stop working. Their ownership doesn't. The most expensive financial mistake: imagine two friends both earn exactly $100,000 every year. First spends every extra dollar improving their lifestyle: a bigger apartment, a nicer car, luxury vacations, and the second buys share in businesses, index funds, rental properties, maybe even starts a small company. Fast forward 20 years, their salaries are still almost identical, but their wealth completely different. Why? Because salaries grow slowly, assets compound, and the compounding is one of the most powerful forces in economics. Albert Einstein is often credited with calling compound interest the eighth wonder of the world, although historians debate whether he actually said it. Whether he did or not, the principle remains true. Compounding doesn't grow in straight lines, it grows like an avalanche, small at first, then unstoppable. The first million is difficult, the next 10 million becomes easier, and the 100 million, then eventually the assets themselves do most of the work. That's when money starts making more money, and then by people can earn by working. Think about the biggest companies on earth. At one point, they are tiny, small teams, tiny offices, uncertain futures. Most people looked at them and saw risk. Founders saw possibility. When people bought products, the company became more valuable. When investors bought shares, the company became more valuable. When profits increased, the company became more valuable. And because founders owned a large piece of that company, their personal wealth exploded. Notice something important: they didn't need to sell more hours, they simply owned a larger percentage of something that kept growing. This is why equity is different from salary, and your salary grows one paycheck at a time, and equity can grow while you are asleep. And that's why founders often become millionaires long before they ever receive massive paychecks. Ownership, not income, creates extraordinary wealth. But ownership alone isn't enough to explain the story, and because here's where things become truly unbelievable. Many billionaires don't actually sell their assets. In fact, some intentionally avoid selling them for decades. Instead, they use a financial strategy that most ordinary people never ever hear about. A strategy so powerful, it allows them to spend enormous amounts of money without giving up ownership, without losing control, and often without triggering the same kind of taxes that many workers face on ordinary income. It sounds impossible, but it's real, and once you understand how it works, you'll understand why wealth often grows faster at the very top, and that's coming up next. Imagine this, you own a company worth $20 billion. Almost all of your wealth exists on paper, not as cash and not in your checking account, just ownership. Now imagine you want to buy another mansion, a private jet, or invest in another company. Most people think you'd simply sell some of your shares, and but that's not the case, and that's not what happened. Instead, you call your bank. The bank looks at your billions of dollars in the stocks and says, "We'll lend you the money instead." Why? Because your shares are valuable collateral. You don't sell your assets, you don't reduce your ownership, your investments can continue appreciating while you use borrowed money. This is one of the biggest differences between how ordinary people and ultra wealthy people use debt. Most people borrow to buy things that lose value: cars, consumer goods, lifestyles. Many wealthy investors borrow against assets that have historically appreciated over long periods. Debt can become a financial tool, not just a financial burden. Not all debt is equal. A credit card charging high interest for everyday purchases, that usually expensive debt. Borrowing to acquire an asset that earns income or grows in value, that can be productive debt, though it also carries risk. Think about it. If someone borrows to buy an apartment building, the tenants may help cover the mortgage through rent. If the property's value rises over time, the owner benefits twice: income and appreciation. The key isn't simply borrowing, it's what you are borrowing for. The wealthy often ask, "Will this debt help me own more assets?" Many people ask, "Can I afford the monthly payment?" Those are two completely different questions. Here's where the conversation becomes controversial. When you earn a salary, taxes are generally deducted based on your country's tax system. But if the value of your stock portfolio rises in many jurisdictions, that increase is unrealized until you sell. That means the timing and type of taxation can be very different from wages. This doesn't mean billionaires paid no tax. They often paid significant taxes on salary, dividends, property, and realized gains, but the tax treatment of labor income and investment gains has historically differed in many countries. Supporters argue these rules encourage entrepreneurship and long term investment. Critics argue they contribute to widening wealth inequality. The debate continues, and it's one of the most important economic discussions in the world. Imagine two people working at the same company. One earns an impressive salary and the other owns 10% of the company. If the business doubles in value, who becomes wealthier? Not necessarily the person working the hardest, the owner, because ownership scales, labor has limits. There are only 24 hours in a day. Ownership doesn't care about time. A successful company can create value every minute, in every time zone around the world. This is why founders often become extraordinarily wealthy, not because they collect massive paychecks, but because they keep a meaningful stake in something that becomes far more valuable. 100 years ago, growing a business usually meant building another factory, hiring more workers, buying more machines. Growth was expensive. Today, a small software team can build an application and distribute it to millions of people almost instantly, and the cost of serving the millionth customer may be only slightly higher than serving the thousandth. This is called scalability, and the technology has made it one of the greatest wealth creators in history. A single successful app, a cloud platform, a payment network, and AI service, these businesses can expand globally without adding cost at the same pace. That's one reason so many of today's richest people build technology companies. Imagine you are the only person with a phone, it's useless. Now imagine everyone you know has one. Suddenly its value skyrockets. That's a network effect. The more people who use certain products, the more valuable those products become. The payment apps, online marketplaces, social networks, professional platforms, search engines, each new user can make the platform more useful for everyone else. This creates a powerful advantage. New competitors are not just building a product, they are trying to create an entire ecosystem, and that's incredibly difficult. Once a company reaches enough scale, its position can become very hard to challenge. This may be the most surprising part of the story. Economic crises are painful. People lose jobs, businesses close, families struggle. But history also shows that major downturns can create extraordinary opportunities for investors with available capital. When market fall, quality assets may become cheaper. Some investors sell because they are afraid, others buy because they can. If markets recover over time, those purchases may appreciate significantly. This doesn't happen automatically, it's never guaranteed. But throughout history, many investors have built enormous wealth by purchasing valuable assets during periods of widespread fear. As the famous investing principle goes, be fearful when others are greedy and greedy when others are fearful. Simple to say, extremely difficult to do. Here's something people rarely consider. The wealthiest individuals usually don't make major financial decisions alone. They often have teams, accountants, lawyers, investment professionals, estate planners, and tax specialists, business advisors. Each expert helps protect and grow wealth. It's like entering a championship football match. One player walks onto the field alone, the other arrives with an entire coaching staff. Who has the better chance of winning over the long run? Knowledge compounds, advice compounds, relationship compound, and just like money, those advantages can grow over time. So far, we have uncovered something remarkable. Billionaires don't simply earn more, they own more. They borrow differently, they invest differently, they think differently about time, and they often operate with systems designed to preserve and compound wealth. But one question still remains: if all this is true, does that mean the system is unfair? Or is this simply how capitalism rewards innovation, risk, and ownership? The answer is far more complicated than either side usually admits, and that's where our story goes next. By now, we have uncovered the mechanics of wealth, ownership, compounding, leverage, technology, networks, time. But understanding how billionaires become richer is different from answering another question: should they? This is where economics stops being just numbers and becomes philosophy. Because depending on who you ask, billionaires are either the greatest creators of prosperity or the greatest beneficiaries of an unfair system, and the truth may lie somewhere in between. Supporters of capitalism make a compelling argument. No one forced millions of people to buy these products. People chose them. Every smartphone purchased, every online order placed, every software subscription renewed, every streaming service paid for, every electric car sold. Those choices created enormous companies, and because founders owned part of those companies, they became extraordinarily wealthy. And from this perspective, billionaires are not taking wealth away from society. They are creating products that society voluntarily rewards. If millions of people happily buy something you invented, shouldn't you benefit? Many economists say yes, innovation deserves reward, risk deserves reward. Building a company that survives years of uncertainty deserves reward. Without that possibility, who would take the risk of building the next breakthrough? Critics respond with a different question: did everyone start the race from the same starting line? Some people grow up surrounded by opportunity, others grow up surrounded by obstacles. Access to education, healthcare, stable housing, professional networks, mentors, capital, and these advantages matter. A brilliant entrepreneur with no access to funding may never build the next great company. Meanwhile, someone with connections, financial support, and experienced advisors may have much easier path. And talent matters, hard work matters, and but opportunity matters too. Success is rarely created by a single factor. Imagine two equally talented entrepreneurs. One starts an online bookstore in 1994, and just as the internet begins transforming commerce, the other launches the exact same idea in 2026. Would they experience the same success? Probably not. Timing changes everything. Many of the world's most successful founders openly acknowledge the role of luck, not luck alone, but a luck combined with preparation, meeting the right person, launching at the right moment, being in the right country, surviving a financial crisis, finding the right investors. History is filled with brilliant people who never became millionaires and billionaires simply because the timing wasn't right. Luck doesn't replace skill, but it often determines how far a skill can go. There's an idea in sociology known as Matthew effect. The principle is simple. Those who already have advantages often gain even more advantages. A successful founder attracts better investors. Better investors attract better employees. Better employees build better products. Better products attract more customers. More customers attract more capital. Success feeds success. Failure often works the opposite way. One setback makes the next challenge even harder. This doesn't mean outcomes are predetermined, but it does explain why wealth often becomes concentrated over time. Momentum matters, and wealth creates momentum. Another controversial question: does extreme wealth translate into influence? Large companies is often spend significant amounts on lobbying, legal teams, public relations, and policy advocacy. Supporters argue this ensures lawmakers understand how regulations affect businesses and jobs. Critics argue it gives wealthy individuals and corporations a louder voice than ordinary citizens. This debate isn't limited to one country, it exists around the world. Where should the balance be? How much influence should money have in shaping public policy? Reasonable people disagree, but almost everyone agrees on one thing: wealth doesn't only buy things, it can also increase access, relationships, and opportunities. Imagine two children, one inherits nothing, the other inherits a thriving business, investments, and experienced mentors. Neither child chose where they were born, yet their financial starting points are completely different. This is why wealth often lasts for generations, not only because money is inherited, but because knowledge, relationships, education, and business experience are inherited too. We often think of inheritance as cash, but the most valuable inheritance may be information, knowing how money works, knowing how businesses operate, knowing the right people. Those advantages are difficult to measure, but they can shape an entire lifetime. So, where does this leave us? If wealth compounds, if opportunity matters, if timing matters, if ownership matters, if technology rewards skill, and what happens next? Because a new revolution has already begun: artificial intelligence, automation, and data. Some experts believe they could create wealth on a scale the world has never seen before. Others fear they could make inequality even greater. Could the first trillionaire emerge in our lifetime? And more importantly, what lessons can ordinary people take from all this? That's where we go in the final chapter. Every generation has a defining technology: the steam engine, electricity, internet, and smartphone. Today, that technology is artificial intelligence. But AI isn't just another invention, it's a force multiplier. It helps one programmer do the work of 10, one designer create in hours instead of weeks, one company serve millions of customers with fewer employees. And here's why that matters: the companies with the most computing power, the best AI talent, the largest data sets, and the deepest pockets may improve far faster than everyone else. That doesn't guarantee they'll dominate forever. History shows that today's leaders can be disrupted by tomorrow's innovators, but AI could make scale even more valuable than it already is. The next decade may create extraordinary opportunities. It may also create new challenges for workers, businesses, and governments. Not long ago, $1 billion sounded impossible. Today, there are hundreds of billionaires around the world. So, could someone eventually become the world's first trillionaire? Some analysts believe it's possible if several conditions align. A founder retains a significant ownership stake, their company grows for decades, new technologies create massive global demand, and markets continue expanding. No one knows who that person might be or if it will happen on the timelines some predict. But one thing is certain: as long as businesses can serve billions of people, the scale of wealth creation will remain astonishing. After hearing everything in this documentary, it would be easy to walk away thinking the game is rigged or I'll never become wealthy. But that's not the lesson. The lesson is this: most people spend years trying to increase their income. The wealthiest people spend decades increasing their ownership, and that's mean everyone can build a $1 billion company but it does mean the principles of ownership are available on many different scales. Owning part of a business, owning investments, owning intellectual property, building a brand, creating products, developing skills that can be leveraged beyond your time. The size may differ, the principle remains the same. Here is a question worth asking yourself every month: how much of your money goes towards consuming? How much goes towards owning? The shoes you buy will eventually wear out. The newest phone you will eventually become outdated. The car will lose value. But an investment, a business, a productive skill may continue creating value long after the purchase over decades. Small ownership decisions can compound into meaningful wealth, not overnight, not without risk, but gradually. The biggest difference between many successful entrepreneurs and everything else isn't intelligence. It isn't luck alone. It isn't working 20 hours a day. It's often the questions they ask. Employees frequently ask, how can I get a raise? Business owners ask, how can I build a system? Investors ask, how can this asset grow over time? These questions lead to different decisions, different habits, and eventually different outcomes. Money is powerful, but money itself isn't the real story. Ownership is, compounding is, innovation is, time is. Some billionaires transformed entire industries, some benefited from extraordinary timing, some inherited advantages. Many combined talent, relentless execution, opportunity, and a bit of luck. There is no single formula, and that's exactly why the debate continues. Should society create more billionaires or create more opportunities for everyone to build wealth? Maybe the better question is, how do we build an economy where innovation is rewarded without leaving millions behind? That question doesn't have an easy answer, but understanding how wealth works is the first step toward participating in it. Because whether you agree with billionaires or not, the rules that build wealth don't disappear simply because we ignore them. The people who understand those rules are usually the ones who benefit from them. So, what do you think? Are billionaires simply better at creating value, or does the modern economic system naturally concentrate wealth at the top? There is no simple answer, but and that's exactly why this conversation matters. If this documentary challenged the way you think about money, share it with someone who believes that becoming wealthy is only about working harder. Because sometimes the most important financial lesson is realizing that you have been playing by rules you never knew existed. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.